Sorry, I have some medicine. Right. Okay. So we'll start. Today is being the last day. We try to cover uh, the topic what we have left last time, and then we may moving to the right. So we start last week about the change management. I think we discussed about why we need to change and all. I think we define change as well as then I will start from here again. Forces influence change, right? Now, remember in your right, okay. Now, there are some factors. Now, the factors, those are we call as triggers. Now, triggers mean the factors what drives change for an organization. There are external triggers as well as the internal triggers. Now, what that means external forces and internal forces, and another name for external forces we call triggers. Now, those are we call sometimes we call indirect actions or external triggers or external forces, like especially for pestle factors, customers, competitions, we call them as direct action parts. That is what you call um, the general factors. And internal factors. Internal factors mean we call them as usually those are we call them as due to their own changes took place due to internal triggers, internal forces, goals, objectives, plans, company, right? And also we can say what are the external factors as we explained to you. Those are we call them as customers, competitors. A new competitor comes to the scene, maybe due to the political environment change. That means changes in government, new environmental protection policies introduced, then new labor laws comes, some growth or recessions. Now we sometimes we need to change in this situation because of this COVID-19. So that is because of the growth or recessions, changes in the currency rates and the interest rate, the disposable income of the people. We need to check the social factors we can consider about attitudes, the environmentalists and fashion trends, all things, right? And the technological factors because of new innovations about for IT, for banks have faced lot of things. And also due to competition pressure, the competitors pressure, change the power of customers, change the suppliers. So those are external forces can be used here as a need for change due to external triggers. So external forces may be due to changes the customers, change the competitors, special factors, market condition. So these things were changed as a result of that. Basically, we need to change ourselves, right? And the second factor we call them as we need to change because of certain internal forces. Now the internal forces like change in the goals of the organization, objectives, company problems, maybe we need to do something. Now again, due to philosophy mean a new ownership. Now the management has changed. Therefore, new CEO, new ownership, new management style. So we need to change the change management. We need to need for a change. Then due to reorganizations of the organization, due to our company was taken over by or merged with another organization or taken over by another company, or maybe there may be some restructuring process, and due to personal reasons, because of rules and procedures change, because of the change of the conditions, that mean location change, or maybe outsourcing of things like that, as well as some due to technological changes, which also can be things, and also due to union pressure, change in the leadership. Those are factors which contributed um, internally. That is why we call them as internal triggers. We call them as internal triggers, right? We call them as internal triggers. So we need to change because of these two factors. Those are we call forces influence change. External triggers or external forces or internal forces, right? That we have discussed in detail. Then we discuss apart from that, where many other changes, as systems, procedure, and things like that. Then change can be taken place in three levels. We discussed that also, from the individual perspective, because change the job assignment of an employee, right? Moving employee to different but suitable location. So that's the individual change. Or maybe group levels, or maybe due to organizational level. There are three levels organization need to be changed, right? Significant change at the individual level will have to impact on the group, which in turn might influence the whole organization. Right. So then that also we discuss, and then we discuss type of organizational change. Now, under that also we discuss about the plan change. Now, what do you mean by a plan change? Is a conscious, basically, it's a conscious change that occurs at least a result of some logic reason. So we have planned these changes. So then emergent change means some spontaneous occurrence due to some suddenly something come out. So we have to take some radical action. So that is emergent change. Now there's another type of change we call continuous change. Now this continuous change is usually we call them as is an incremental change. The continuous change, another name for, is called continuous change or incremental change. Now that occurs on a daily basis. Every day certain things are changing. Then subsystem change. That means, so your department, or you may be amalgamate a certain department, so there's a loss making certain department, so therefore you need to take some decisions about this in that particular department or team, or we have to close that particular department or something like that. And then also we have a different type remedial change that calls for transformation in a particular situation, task, or procedure. We need to take some corrective measure on that issue. Then development change that take upon the purpose of improvement in the nature. So that's another change. Likewise, there may be a different type of um, change will take place. Those are, we call them as type of changes. And for we need to understand all these changes in four broader spectrum. That is basically we call them as extent of change. The extent of change, the change can be classified basically the extent or maybe the scope of the change required, and the speed with the change is to be achieved, right? So there are two factors we take into account deciding type of organizational change, right? Two, what are the two factors taken into account? One is to the scope of the change, as well as the speed, right? So with the change can be achieved. right? So depend on that. So we need to look at whether it is a remedial change or the development change, organizational wide change, or whatever you require, right? So those are the two factors will impact for deciding the type of change. One is the scope as well as the speed. So when you quickly we need, or maybe we what is the scope, what are the areas we need to change, right? Based on that, we determine the type of those changes, right? And mind you, so but usually out of all these types, we prefer what we, if you want a quick change, step change like this. But if you want to change gradually, so that's an incremental change. I think the everybody's like incremental change happen in the organization, right? So that you need to understand all these things. Okay, now let me now these are incremental change. That is mean incremental change means step by step change. Organization therefore prefer incremental changes, right? Not all other changes. Right, now we discuss this part as well as we discuss resistant to change. Now what do you mean by resistant? Now resistant to change is the action um, taken by individual or group when they perceive that change is occurring is a threat to them, right? That is why people resist to change, right? Because resistant to change is the action taken by individual or groups when they perceive that change that is occurring is a threat to them, right? It's something threat to them. That is why they said change, because of fear and risk associated with it, right? Okay, so if you really define what is resistant, any attitude or behavior that reflects a person's unwillingness to make a support or a decision change, right? So you need to understand that, right? So what is resistant to change mean? If action taken by the individual or group of people, they perceive that the change is occurring a threat to them. That means because of fear and the risk associated with it, right? Now if you really define what is resistant, is any attitude or behavior that reflects a person's unwillingness to make or support a desired change, the unwillingness to support or take that change, right? So therefore remember, resistant to change is play an I mean, we need to handle it a very professional manner, right? Now let me look at it reasons to change in a different angle. Now two of the important sources of resistance we discuss: rational resistant and emotional resistant. The two type of important sources of resistance. Why people resist, right? One is rational resistance, other one is emotional resistance. Now rational resistance occurs when people do not have the proper knowledge or information or evaluate the change. So we don't have some informations about why organizations want to change, and they don't have an idea, so therefore they resist, right? Then when people are provided with relevant information in the form of data or facts, the resistance decreases and they become more open for change. So the first resistance may be due to lack of information. So that we call rational resistance, right? Rational resistance. So another factor is an emotional resistance. It is an involve the psychological problems. What is the psychological problem? Of fear, suspicions, because they feel they are having an insecurity of their job, or maybe they having power losing because of this change. They may thinking they are losing the salary, maybe losing the job, like that. Now these problems arise when people think the change will affect them negatively. So why emotional resistance? They feel it, the change is impacted very badly for them. That is emotional resistance. So that the management of an organization can deal with the emotional resistance of people by counseling and convincing them about the positive outcome of the change, right? So these are the sources of resistance. Okay, clear? Those are the sources of resistance, called rational resistance, emotional resistance. Now, apart from that, let me just explain reason for resisting change. Reason for resisting change. Now, I will explain. It is not in your handout, but in three ways. Right? We'll just look at it. Why people are resistant to change. Okay, why people are resistant to change. Now, there are three ways you can say the reason for resistant change. First one I can discuss with you, due to some, this is something new, right? Another way I will explain. Apart from that, I will explain this as well. But then we look at in the reason for resistance and three ways. One, due to job factors. Due to job factors. Now, what are the job factors? Fear of technological unemployment, because the organizations come up with a new package with the technological factor, so therefore they fear of unemployment. That is we call fear of technological unemployment. Then the second one, that may be due to a fear of changes to working conditions. Now, draw this one here. If you want to just to see, resistant to change, right? Okay, resistant to change, right? Due to one factor is due to what? Job, due to what you call job factors. Now, what are these job factors? Job factors are due to technological, technological, uh, technological, fear of technological non-form. That means fear of technological unemployment. Right? Another factor you can say fear of changes to working condition. Right? Fear of changes to working condition. So your working condition may be changed, right? Condition, or maybe another one you can say the job factors resistant to change may be due to fear of demotions or reduced pay. Fear of demotion or reduced pay, right? So these are the three reasons which contribute to job factors which ultimately resistant to change. Job factors: fear of technological unemployment, fear of changes to working condition, fear of demotions or reduced pay. There are other factors, right, may contributing to the changes. That is what you call social factors. Sometimes we call social factors. Social factors, right? Social factors. Job factors. What are social factors? What are social factors? Why people are resistant to change? Due to, right. Now, dislike need to be, that is what you call, I will explain to you, dislike. Um, if I say, we say dislike, personal dislike. personal dislike of people implementing. So what do you mean by that? That means so then you don't like the people who do the changing. They don't like because they feel it. These people may always come up with bad thing for them, right? Second one, you can say due to lack of consultation. Lack of consultation. So what do you mean by that? That means you are not consult them, right? Tell them the story about those things, right? Uh, then you can say next one is reluctant to break existing social relationship. Now, relationship. So what do you mean by that? Because now at the moment you are having some sort of a relationship with your co-workers, your friends and all. So you are thinking it will break this relationship, right? And that is the social factors. And you can say third another factor, we can say due to um, personal factors. Due to personal factors due to personal factors. Now, what are these personal factors? Personal factors can be contributing to implied criticism of current working method, right? That means implied criticism of current working methods. You are criticizing current methods you are using. So always new change you are criticizing, right? Then maybe due to feel less value. Right? Next one, feel less valued. Now the people think employees may thinking they feel it. They are no more any more value, right? You are earlier as very well person, well recognized by the management, but you think now your value may be reduced because of this new change, right? And also can say work become more monotonous, ekakari. So these are the reasons why people usually resistant to change. This may be due to job factors, due to personal factors, or due to social factors. What are job factors? Fear of technological unemployment, fear of change to working condition, fear of demotions or reduced pay. That's for your because of job factors. Then the social factors we call you don't like the people who initiated this changing process, right? You don't like because you have a negative impact because of these people are always doing something bad or maybe due to lack of consultation. So that means you are blaming the management. So you must ask from, you must communicate to me, us. Then the last one is to reluctant to existing social relationship because of so the existing social relationship may be losing, right? And the third point is the personal factor, and that is due to working methods and feel less valued or work become more monotonous. These are the some resistant to change in apart from the what I have given you in the handout, right? Okay, now let's look at it in your handout what they talk about. Reason for resistance. Every individual has a unique set of attributes, thoughts, and characteristics. So therefore, there can be varying factors that cause resistance among them, right? Individual resistance can occur as because of various reasons. Now, one is psychological reason I explained to you, resistant among individuals that include inherent liking to status quo, egoism. Is come from the personal points, right? Okay, personal point. And due to maybe economic reasons, maybe due to job factors, right? That is arise due to fear of economic losses. So job factors we call economic. That arise due to fear of economic, fear of technological upgradation that can be replaced by machine, fear of salary reduction, right? Fear of salary reduction, then fear of people that present skills would get obsolete and they would not be able to master new skill, right? And those are some of the examples for economic reason, right? Now, so there are two methods I'll explain to you. Apart from that, resistant to change. Another method we call resistance to change, as I explained in my note. One method is psychological reason, psychological factors, as well as economic factors. Right? There are two methods, right? A, B. So the resistance may be changed due to psychological factors, economic factors. Or you can use resistance to change like these job factors, personal factors, or social factors. One, I think we better to have the first method, why people are resistant to change due to these three factors, right? So resistant to change due to psychological and economic also explain the same thing, but this is more explanatory version. Okay, why people are changed to resistant to change. Okay, right. Okay, now now we understood why people are uh, changed to race, change to or change, right? Now, resistant now may take many forms. Now, how they show the resistance, how the employee show the resistance, how the individual show the resistance. Now, the resistance may take many forms. Now, including active, passive, overt or covert, individual or organized, aggressive team. Now, different ways they show the reaction. Some people are active and some people are, without telling anything, they object. Some are active and passive. Avert and cover, they talk. Then some are individual and some are organized. Right? Group of people come against that. Right? Now, for each sources of resistance, management need to provide an appropriate response. So management need to understand, identify, right? Okay. Now again, another definition, another Cotter and Skelsinger, also another scientist who uh, studied about the change management, also come up with another reason, another set of reasons. One is some people are concerned with the implications of change or for themselves and how it may affect their own interest rather than considering the success of the business. That is what you call parochial self-interest. They, rather than they think about how it's good for business, but and they think how it impact individual person. Now the change is good for business, but they don't like because it's individually impact you. So that is what you call parochial self-interest. Then maybe misunderstanding, because that is due to lack of communication. So they are not properly informed about the changes. Then low tolerance to change. Certain people are very keen on security and stability in their work, so they don't want to change. The next one is the some employees may disagree on the reason for the change and on the advantages and disadvantages of the changing process. So that is different assessments of the situation, right? And that again another method. So we now move on. We may learn uh, C method, third method. third method of resistance, reasons, right? Developed by uh, developed by um, developed by Cotter, the scientist. So what he said, he identified four reasons. What are the four reasons? He has identified one factor we call parochial self-interest. We call parochial self-interest. Now, what do you mean by the paro? P-R-P-A-R-O, C-H-I-L-E, right? C-H-I-A-L, C-H-I-A-L, right? Parochial self-interest. Now, parochial self-interest, as I explained to you, people are concerned with the implications for themselves, how it will differ. Now, this change may be good for business, but how it impact you, that is what they are worried, not about the business. The second method you can say is called misunderstanding. Due to misunderstanding, that means, right, due they are not properly communicated. Third reason you can say due to low tolerance to change, or low tolerance to change, right? Because they don't want to change, right? So they happy with the present, and they look at it about the security as well as the stability in the present job. Last one, different assessment of the situation, right? Different assessment of the situation. That means they work it out, what are the benefits they are going to get after this change, and then they evaluate the pros and cons, and based on that they may be resist or right. So now we have identified basically three types of resistance to change, but ultimately all are telling certain common thing. But we need to understand first, resistance to change due to job factors, personal factors, and social factors. That's the first one. Under that, we discuss different types. And then the second method we discuss resistant to change due to physiological, psychological factors or economic factors. Right. Third method developed by Cotter, and what he said he has identified four factors. That is parochial self-interest. That means so rather than the business aspect, they look at individual. Now business good if you did this change, but how it impact personally. That is parochial self-interest. Then you misunderstand. We are not communicate the better about this change. That's another issue. So this is happened most of the time. If your boss is not aware, right, you are trying to communicate with others was not like to this change. So low tolerance change mean so they look at it your present security of the job, instability, and also differences assessment of the situation. That mean so you evaluate the new change and assess whether how good and how bad this changes to you, and then based on that you take a decision, decisions, right. Now that is the reason for change. So now we discuss a lot of things, and the reason for change due to economic reason, psychological reason, as well as the quarter reasons and other three reasons. Right? Those are all the reason why people resist to change. Right? Remember that. Okay. Now we move into what are the symptoms of resistance. Now I told you some people basically behave and show how they resist. Some are basically individually resist, some are right uh, active, possess, overt or covered, individual, organized, aggressive team. So we management need to understand, right? So okay, now we look at it, the same thing. What are the symptoms of resistance, right? One is developing disinterest towards work. They don't want to work. Then another symptoms you can see, increasing absenteeism. So increasing absenteeism, not participating any discussion, not supporting, that show increasing absenteeism. And feeling tension and discomfort, you not like same employee, right? And participating to shutdown, strike, those are symptoms of resistance, right? Now we have identified what are the factors will uh, so then what are the tactics you can use for uh, what are the tactics you can? It's not in your handout, no? Oh, right, right. Okay, right. What are the tactics for overcoming resistance to change? In your handout, 1 minute. See, it's not in my handout. Okay, right. Okay. So, what are the tactics, right? What are the tactics? Uh, what are the tactics? Okay. Right. What are the tactics for overcoming resistance to change? It is in your handout. The first approach is, as explained to you, provide information, communications, and educate them. Right? But change is technical. Most of the time, you notice the reason for change. Maybe they are not communicated properly, or maybe a misunderstanding and all, or maybe same thing, lack of consultation. Here they talk about misunderstanding, right? Here they talk about uh, due to a psychological factor, right? Same thing. So therefore, you need to communicate with the employees, educate them, talk about the benefit for them. The next method is participation. Now, participation means you make bringing to the discussion. They make involving in changing process. So that is a participation, right? Make it that is their baby. Get them involved, right? And then the automatic. Most of the time, what happens in the big resistance, union people get involved to the changing process, right? And next one is maybe negotiation. Okay, talk about how your salary increase because of this risk change. What are the other fringe benefits or other benefits you're going to enjoy, right? Things like. And the cohesion sometimes may show a crisis exists, right? Now, sometimes we have no option, right? We have compelled to do that. Otherwise, you are losing the job, right? Something like. And also remember for if the man, if the employees get to know uh, this involving in the top management support for this change, they may sometimes may agree on that, right? So those are we call some practice you can use to overcome those resistance. One is communication and educate them, participation them, negotiate, cohesion, and top management support. So these are some of the techniques you can use. So your tactics you can use to handle these resistance, right? Okay. Now, how can you do the resistance? How can you conduct this changing process? Right? You may use sometimes there are two type of change agents. We call them as agent. Or change agent mean persons or group of that brings change or helps its implementation. Right? Now, there are two types of change agent. External change agent, that people who have expertise in managing those change, we will get them into the scene, or maybe using internal change agents. That mean a manager or union who have the capabilities or well accepted by the internal employees, you can make use of it. A respected person, well recommended, that's been opinion leader in the organization. There are two types of change agent you can use it. One is from external change agent, other one is internal change agent. Now, external change agent mean there's a person um, who will come from the outside and who have expertise how to handle such a changes, or maybe internal changes. Now, when we learn about HR, can you remember HR, a new role in 2021, the new era? HR also can be act as a change agent, right? Remember that strategy partner, change partner, right, Matakaina? So likewise, you can make use of HR also as an internal change agent, right? Okay, so that means the person bring outside to support this change management process, right? Now let's me look at it. What is this process of change management, right? Now, how to do these things, how we conduct this, the process of change management. Okay, change is, I we discussed earlier, is an inevitable thing. So because why? Because due to internal triggers or maybe due to external triggers. So therefore, an organization need to constantly devise mechanism to manage the change, because we need to change. This is inevitable, right? Because due to two reasons, we said internal and external. So therefore, we need to manage in a incremental way, or maybe quick way, like that, right? An efficient organization not only manage the current changes but also look forward to deal with any future contingencies as well. So, good management team need to understand the what are the changes may take place in the current position, maybe due to longer term. Now, say take an example. Now we are experiencing a COVID issue. Now, say you are a travel agency, or maybe airline ticketing agency, or maybe a hotel industry. Now you have to identify current changes and what may be the future changes. Now, how you handle your existing employees, the ideal situation. Now, think about government, state bank, and a private bank. Now, how you handle such changes. So, the private banks, as the government banks, we need to go for IT-based technology. Therefore, there may be a losing certain people jobs, right? In the future, there will be a lot of people will change. I think these USA and all, a lot of banks are closing. So how you look after them? Their job is a social issue then. So it's the entire process of change management, right? So therefore, remember, so you need to manage or your change process it very carefully. So we have identified 5 basic steps to change management. 5 basic steps for change management. One is, we call them as 5 steps of change management. It's the recognizing the forces demanding change, right? That is due to, we can make use of from due to, it may be due to external trigger or maybe internal trigger. So you have to identify the forces, right? Forces can be, I told you, maybe due to external trigger or maybe internal trigger, or maybe external resource forces or internal forces, right? Then you diagnosing the problem. As a result of that, so what is the problem your organization going to face because of these changes, forces? right? What is the real impact? Whether it is impact your profitability, impact your staff cost, whether it is impact your business opportunities, sales comes down, maybe due to some quality if you are using the old machines and things like that. If you are doing the operational manual, more manual operation, so you have to spend more cost. So you diagnosing the real problem because of these change. Then so you need to plan change, how to do this thing. So now you have to plan. You identify, diagnosing the problem, and then you plan the change. How can you do? Whether you can do it in incremental, whether you can do it in suddenly. All right. So those are the way you have to manage the change. Then you say how you communicate. What are the tactics you are going to change? So what are the type of resistance you are expecting from the employees? Individual levels and things like that. So then, so slowly you implementing the change, right? You implementing the change, and then look at the follow-up actions, right? And now these are some of the 5 steps of change management, right? Now, however, it is not easy to implement. Remember, it is not easy to implement change in an organization, right? If you fail to convey the positive effects of changes to the employees. So that is why we need to have a plan, how to communicate, how to avoid a resistance to those change. Having understood all these issues, right? Convey the positive effects, then implement the change in an effective manner. We discussed that. Change should be a permanent, should be a made permanent. Otherwise, there is a possibility that people might revert to the pre-change position, right? So these are the factors we need to take into account when you look for changing process. So up to now, what we discussed the uh, we discuss what is change management, right? Everything's we discuss in change, and in order to growth or survival in the market, we need to do some change. We need to manage the same change. So then after that, we discuss the concept of change or some definitions of change management. And then we discuss what are the triggers for change or what are the forces influence the change. And we identify external forces, so external triggers, and internal reasons. That is why we need to change, right? What are the reasons for why we need? Then we discuss the level of change as well as the type of change, right? It's a planned change or emergent change or continuous change or incremental change or remedial change, development, transformational change. Likewise, there are different type of range. And then we discuss what is resistant. Resistant mean what? Right? And we define resistance as an attitude or behavior that reflects a person's unwillingness to make or support the desired change. That is resistant defined in technically. And then we discuss the 2 types of sources of resistance. And what are the 2 types of sources of resistance? We identify as a rational resistant or maybe emotional resistant in a very broad sense, right? The rational resistance mean occurs when people are not aware about this change, lack of communication. Other one, emotional resistance, may be um, due to fear, right, and risk. Then we discuss the reason for resistance. Under reasons, we discuss 3 methods. What are the methods we discuss? One method is we discuss, we call them as the first one, reason for change because of psychological factors or maybe due to economic factors. And then we discuss that resistance to change due to job factors, and then we discuss is due to social factors or maybe personal factors. Also, we discuss under quarter also identify four reasons for people to resist. That is what you call parochial uh, self-interest, misunderstanding, low tolerance change, and difference assessment of the situation, right? So we discuss in detail all these things, and then we discuss, what is the symptoms of resistance, right? Some people unionize, some people avoid, covert, right, aggressive, like that. So we need to understand, and based on that the management has to take some action. So there are symptoms by the employee show about the change. That is maybe absenteeism, tension, discomfort, right, and strikes and things like that. And then we also discuss very simply what tactics you can use to overcoming some resistance to change. And then also we discuss about the change agent. Now, change agents can be two forms. One is external change agent who has expertise and knowledge about such activities, how you smoothly get the support from employees, as well as other one is external change agent, and who have a well-respected person within the organization, and they believe him, and they support a manager who knows how to handle it, right? And then we discuss process of change management. Is a process that management is consists of some five steps. Steps are recognizing reason for demanding the change, and diagnosing the problem, and planning the change, and we look at it everything, what way the changes resistance can comes, and then implement the change and also follow it up, right? So these are the some of the things what we have learned under change management. Okay, now we moving to the next point. um, Quick questions, right? Discuss two things that managers can do: encourage employees suggesting for new ideas, also come up with change, also come up with innovation, right? New ideas. So now say our products are obsolete, so can come up with new ideas, right? It's a quick question. So how can you come up suggesting for new ideas? You want to change. Now, the classic example was done by the Chevrolet company, as well as the body line, the garment factory. And employees was told to come up with some new ideas how to improve their businesses, and have a notice board. They can come with an idea and his name. So every week, they will select the best idea and they will be awarded. This is how you can encourage change, by getting new ideas from the employees himself, right? So another method, right? Okay, right. Okay, now let's look at it. What are the models, or what you call, uh, there are numerous well-organized models for change management. Now we look at it now, process. Now how can you do this, right? One way, right? Here we'll go, right? We look at it. What is the methods available? Models for change management. Now there are numerous well-organized approaches or models from which to change a change effect. There are a lot of models. Some of these approach have been for many years. Okay, now let me explain some of these models, right? Now, managing change, you can come up with some model. Now, so there are so many models. We call them as stage models, and we call Beer and Ohira models, and to the change agent, change leadership. So a lot of models are available, but we are just going to discuss with you some important points. First one, you can say the strategic management, right? First change with strategic management. Now you see the many organization undertake strategic planning process. As I explained to you earlier, it is a mandatory. Central bank does put mandatory. Every banks need to prepare strategic plan. Now strategic plan itself, right? It's a, you have to do it in a very systematic cycle and explicit approach. Now, strategic management or strategic planning itself is a change process because you need to come up with new strategies. So the basically your employees need to be adhere to the strategies. Now say for an example. Now your bank, example, want to amalgamate or maybe join with another bank, or your bank need to you to take uh, you want to acquire some bank. Now say for an example, National Savings Bank taken over by the National Bank, the Sri Lanka Savings Bank take over by the National Savings Bank. So Lankaputra Bank taken over by the was taken by the Regional Development Bank, and that is the strategic plan, right? Is acquisition. So it's a changing process for Sri Lanka Savings Bank as well as for National Savings Bank, Lankaputra Bank, Regional Development Bank. So that is a strategic plan. Now you need to now then when you develop, say from the point of view the Sri Lanka Savings Bank, so they may look at it. What is our job? Whether we are going to absorb to the National Savings Bank card. So if not, what happened? Right? That's the entire changing process. So therefore, strategic planning process itself, right, is a model for change management. How you handle that strategic plan, right? So therefore, remember, strategic management is also a model for ensuring the success of change, right? First method, simple one, everybody is doing. So you come up with new changes. So therefore, strategic planning is a change management model itself, right? And another methods we discuss here, we call them as um, oh, 1 minute, I'll just see whether it is. Oh no, it is not chair. I just right. Okay. The next method is called what do you call? There are two methods we call um, stage models of the change process. We call them as change model. So there are two type of change stage models um, managing the change. We call stage model. There are two type of stage model. You can put it here. And the second one, force field theory, called force field theory. Um, Other one is we call them as the change process. We call the next method is three-step model, right? Force field theory and three methods. Okay, now here the force field theory is developed by the it's right. It is also developed by the Kurt Lewin. Um and what he said is emphasizes, or he Levin also emphasizes the importance of force field analysis. Right? He argued that managers should consider any uh, any change situation in terms of what are the factors encouraging change, that is driving force. You need to understand what factors driving change. Second factors, what factors hinder the change, or we call them as restraining forces, right? So you need to understand there are two type of forces. One is that is what you call uh, the change as a result of the competition between driving and restraining forces. Restraining forces mean which impacted or hinder changes, but other encouraging forces, right? Now, so then what he said, right? What basically he's talk about. Sorry. Now, suppose change will be only successful if the driving forces are larger than the restraining forces. Now, restraining forces are, I can tell you some example for restraining forces. Uh, so about the job security, then um, then fear of loss, fear of change, right? Um, Group performance norms. So those are some of the new some of the fear of change. Those are, we call them restraining forces. Now let's look at some of the driving forces. So new technology, then fresh challenge in the job, competition from other groups, supervisory pressures, so increase some job discretion. So these are, we call them as forces to change. And now what I've simply explained to you, what do you mean by a force field analysis mean. Again, it was developed by Kurt Lewin, but here he has identified three types of forces: restraining forces and driving forces. Now, sustaining forces mean the factors that hinder the change. They don't like. But the driving forces mean factors that encouraging change. Right. Now, change will only be successful. What happened? So your driving forces is more than the restraining forces. So therefore, what you as manager need to do? You need to strengthen the driving forces, right? And also what you try to do, you try to uh, weakening the restraining forces. So that is the model explained by Kurt Lewin under force field analysis, right? I think you understood. So what do you mean by a force field uh, analysis, right? Again, I will explain to you, and what was developed by, again, it is a stage model. We call them as force field analysis. There are two types of forces. One is a driving forces which facilitate, will encourage to change, and there are some forces which are hinder the change. So those are, we call, restricting forces. Now, what you need to do as a manager, so in change to be successful, you need to improve, or you need to increase the driving forces than restricting forces. So if then only your change is successful. So therefore, you as a manager, what you do under this method, you need to strengthen your driving forces as well as you try to weakening your restraining forces, right? So that's a very simple field force method, right? Then you go for the next method is again Kurt Lewin was developed this process. Again, we call another name for this change process, we call is a stage model, and we call them as Levin's three-stage models. Levin's three-stage model. Now, you know this method, these three-stage model, why we call them as a three-stage? We call unfreeze, change, refreeze, right? Okay, I'll explain, don't worry. So this was developed by Kurt Lewin in 1950s, right? Now what he say, he argued that in order to change occur successfully, organization need to progress through these stages. Any now earlier under force field analysis, what they say, okay, this change to be taken place, you must have a more stronger driving forces than restraining forces. Now, second method, the third method, what we discussed earlier method is strategy planning. Second is force field analysis. Third methods we discussing now, we call uh, three-stage models developed by Kurt Lewin. Right now, what he said, if this process to be successful, um, it need to be a progress through these three stages. Right. Okay, now let's look at it. What Kurt Lewin said. Right. Now, first stage is what? Unfreezing. Now, unfreezing. Right. What do you mean by unfreezing? Unfreezing means now make realizations to need of changing. Now, in this stage, basically, managers need to make the need for change to be obvious, that most people can easily understand and accept it. We have to explain it why we need this changing. Unfreezing also, remember, involves creating the initial motivation to change by convincing staff of the undesirability of the present situation, right? So now how can you do that? Ways of destabilizing the present uh, stability. So you have to identify and exploiting the existing areas, stress or dissatisfying areas about your present situation, right? And how can you do that? Especially through communication, explaining the need for change is vital within this unfreeze stage. So first stage is basically we talk about unfreezing before introducing the change to an organization structure, procedure, anything. So create awareness about the people and talk to people, telling their present dissatisfaction level. All these things you need to uh, explain, right? That is what you call unfreezing. Clear? So try to explain the negative things about the present situation. That is unfreezing. So how can you do that? Through communications and things like that, right? The next stage, once you have done this stage properly, what is the next change? The next change is the changing stage. Changing stage or the change stage. Now, the change process itself is mainly concerned with identifying what the new behavior or norm should be. The stage will often, this stage is always often involved uh, establishing a new patterns of behavior. You identify the problems and solution, and setting up a new reporting relationship, creating new reward or incentive scheme, provide them adequate training. And it is vital that new information is communicated concerning the new attitudes, the culture and the concept of the organization wants to be adapted, so that there are internalized by the employees, right? So this change stage, remember, participation and involvement is often necessary to the individual feel ownership of change. And the change stage, we must provide them, tell them this is your change, this is your plan, this is your ideas, right? And that is what we call identify the problems, develop the action plan, train them, educate them, get the feedback from them, put the ball to them, right? That is the change. Now, first step we discuss, you say need to change to be obvious that most people can easily understandable. That is unfreezing, right? So you talk about the dissatisfaction level of the person, and the negative things, right? Make realizations need for changing, right? And create awareness about why we need change or what are the benefits you are going to do. Then change. Now, then you explain to them, get them involving in the changing process, right? And maybe sometimes give some incentives, some reward if you're going to change. These are the benefits you are going to get. That is the changing, right? Then what happened? Then once you now these people are basically stabilizing, so then you need to freeze them again, refreezing them with a new set of changes. That means refreezing, or sometimes we call stabilizing the change, involves ensuring that people do not slip back into old ways, right? As such, it involves the reinforcement of the new pattern of work behavior, right? It is your duty, right? So it can be by with supported with large rewards. So you can come up with the employees of the month, some new campaign, right? So managers need to set good example for them. Successes are highlighted. Tell them why you earn high result, high uh, high salary, high benefit, more benefit because of change, right? So you try to rephrasing that mentality, right? So therefore, so again, the people are not going back to the form. So that is what you call the simple Kurt Lewin's three stages of model for introducing change, right? Now, example I will can quote for here. Think about bank automation. Now think about the bank. Now, now there may be some economic problem across the world. Many companies have faced with the need to restructure and organize in order to cut cost and improve efficiency. Now, good example. Now banks are going for more on automation or more digitalization, right? Because you need to save a lot of money and the cost cutting and improve the efficiency and things like that, right? Now however, sometimes uh, this may create a significant resistance from the staff, uh, especially now say they're going to do that. If fees happen, the branch is going to close, things like that. There may be special resistance come from the employees working in the branch especially, right? So now how can you use the Kurt Living three stages model for this introducing this digitalization process for bank? First step is unfreezing. Now, this involves, as explained to you, convincing employees of all the initial need for increased automation in the branches. We have to explain them. While this may be difficult to do so, especially if employees are heavily unionized, it is a crucial step in the change of the management process, the rephrasing stage. Because most of the banks are, is unionized. It's very difficult to do this in the first stage. Now, the bank may choose to explain to employees about the current positions in the market in the effect the economic downturn and what are the other competitors are doing, and try to explain the benefit side of the employees. Otherwise, we may outperform. Now, provide more information and then move into the second stage is called change stage. And this is the stage where the proposed change actually occurs, right? It will involve the reductions in the number of branch employees and the installation of new machinery into branches, right? So therefore, you may not in a position to handle this new digitalization process. So therefore, it is important for provide them adequate training, right? And deal with customer queries and complaints about the new branch procedures, maintain the new cash machines, your new cash cycling machine, and communication. It is a vital stage in this. Employees must know what is expected from them during the after the change management process. Then the next step is the refreezing stage. Now this stage try to ensure that the bank staff do not return to the old systems, not in the manual form. In this case, the managers need to prevent staff from processing basic customer transaction themselves rather than convincing customer to use the automated system. Now, banks try to do that through to the customers by they will charge some money when they come to the counter, right? And also you can come up with some new reward scheme to encourage staff to adapt a new procedures. For example, branch staff could receive an increased bonus if a high proportion of their customers are start maintaining their accounts in a digital format or electronic format. Give some benefits to them, so benefit the customer as well as give some incentive to employees as well with the branches, so that it make it the refreezing. So I just give an example how can you use the Kurt Living three stages model if your bank is going for digitalization example, right? Okay, but however there may be a some sort of a criticisms about this Leving's theory. Uh, this model is very simple, right? Easy to understand. So they argue that the model based on the assumption that organizations are stable and static, so the change results from concentrated effect only in one direction. So that's a criticisms because of very simple nature of this thing. So second method, now we learned three models can be used to um, introduce the change process, right? And another method you can use for in this respect is five forces model, that is what you call uh, sorry, of we call them as, right. Third method is called a fourth method we call them as the McKinsey 7S model. McKinsey 7 model. So what is 7S model can be used here? Now here the McKinsey 7S model looks at corporate culture and the various component it is made up of. They look at the various component. Now McKinsey identify there are seven interrelated or interconnected elements, each beginning with the letter S. You see, that is why I call 7S. Now, if you really look at it, these 7S, there are strategy, structure, and the systems, right? Strategy, structure, the systems. We call them as hard factors. We call them hard factors. Why we call is hard? Tangible and easy to quantify. Easy to quantify. Now, what do you mean by a structure? Structure basically look like this looks at the way the organization is structured and the report to whom, how the organization is structured. Then we look at the strategy relates to the ways in which the organization plans to gain a competitive advantage or achieve objectives. Then systems mean these are the daily activities uh, and procedures followed by the staff. Right now, these are we call hard element of the McKinsey strategy, structure, and system. Then there are another four element in the 7S. Those are we call skills, style, staff, and shared values are we call them as soft factors. We call soft. Why we call soft factors? Less easily quantified and more subjective factors. More on a subjective factors. Right? Now, how to use this model for, that's the important thing now, right? How to use this model for change management. Now, the model suggests that the all seven elements have to be aligned with each other in order for organization operation successful. Right? Now let's look at it, because basically, uh, in the context of change, the McKinsey's 7S model can be used to look at the factors that could be affected by change process. Now, how these factors are affected by change process, right? How you will help in improve the organization's understanding of the wider effect of change. If one of these S factors changes, it will have a knock-on effect of other factors. Why? What do you mean by knock-on? If one factor will impact it will impact the other element of the model. Right? Now, uh, take example what we have used earlier. Now, take an example how the McKinsey 7S model for used for change management. Take if the organization introduce a new automated assembly example, right? Now that's a process. Now this would be a change to the company system. Now what do you mean by a system? System means your daily activities and procedure followed by the staff. Now if you introduce automation system, the systems automation model or automated assembly, the system get affected. System means daily activities and procedures followed by staff. It will change, right? Now, staff may be find the lack of appropriate skill. Now, it is impacted the skills of the employees. So, skills leading to uncertainty and resistance because the new systems introduced, it impact the skills of the employees. So, therefore, they may be resistant. They don't know how to use it. So therefore, you must provide some training, and this may lead to reduction in this number of workers, affecting the staff and the structure of the organization. That will affecting the structure as well as the staff of the organization, because they may leave the organization. There's some protection, right? If staff require fewer skills to undertake their roles, the style of the management within the business may be impacted. Right now, you see, if you do some changes for one element of the 7S model, it impacted the other steps, uh, uh, what you call uh, other components, right? Right. So therefore, when you plan for change, so you need to look at it, all these factors. Then accordingly, you can execute your change management in a proper way, right? So therefore, remember, new systems, assembly systems will impact the company's system, and because of that, is appropriate skill is not there, leading to uncertainty, and therefore it impacted the staff and the structure. As because of that, it impact the style of the management. All things we need to, because why? All things are interrelated, right? So therefore, when you're using McKinsey 7S model for change management, you need to look at it, all these seven more elements and how it impact the changing process, right? Okay, you have to take each and every stage or every S factor and take into account when you do for change, how it impact other one, right? Okay, so then another method we can use it is called action research process. Again, 5 steps of component process. First step, identify an issue and developing a research uh, questions on this, and then learn more about what your issue does research show. Third one, developing a strategy for the study. Fourth one, gathering, analyze data, and the fifth one, taking action for sharing with you. So that is the action research process approach of settling. First, you need to identify the problem and what this research show, and will explain what these problems talk about, and then you try to develop a strategy to how to sort out this problem, and then gathering and analyzing the data. So if not, what happened, and take some corrective actions. So those are some of the forces we learn to understand the, or models we use to understand the um, change management, right? So therefore, apart from that, there may be other models I can explain to you, like Beer and Noria models, Kotter's 8-step process, like that, but we don't want to culture web also, so we are not going to talk about these things. We learn some methods. What are the methods, what are the models we learn under this method? We learn the first method we call a force field theory or force field analysis method. Then we look at it, the three-stage model, that is freeze, unfreeze, change, and refreeze. And then we discuss about the 7S model of McKenzie, and then we discuss the last model, which is called action research process, right? So these are the models available if you want to manage your manage your change. Okay, right. So having understood that, don't worry about it. Right now, we are moving to discuss a little bit of another important thing, is what you call diversity, managing diversity. Right, that's a very important, the novel concept in business organization, how to manage the diversity. You see, in an organization, we are going to discuss about what is employee diversity, right? What the pros and cons of employees diversity, what are the initiatives to handle this diversity, right? Okay, now let's look at it. What is diversity? That's important. Now, diversity must be recognized and nurtured as the organization's great asset. Now, so don't think diversity is a bad one. We remember the diversity is important, is considered to be the great asset, and the ability to attract and work with diverse talent must be seen as a critical competitive advantage. So therefore, remember the workforce diversity, right? The managing diversity is an important thing in today's business world, right? So managing diversity means as the planning and implementing organizational systems and practices to manage the people, so that the potential advantage of diversity are maximized while its potential disadvantages are minimal, right? So those are what you mean by a diversity. So diversity, you see, within an organization, you see there are different types of people. So that is what you call workforce diversity, right? And you have a different people in different gender, age structure, social class, sexual orientation, values, personality characteristics, ethnicity, religion, education, language, physical appearance, material status, lifestyles. So in an organization, you have work diverse workforce, right? So that's the important thing. In an organization, you have a diverse work. But a lot of problems are today facing by the, especially for the state banks. Won't see a workforce diversity. All people are, majority of employees are in the one set of people. But today, because we need people like this, different categories, different people like this, different religion, race, ethnicity, lifestyle, disability, all the people are there. That is called the diversity in an organization. Different age, different educational level, right? That is what you call workforce diversity. Because today the diversity play an important role, right? Remember. Now, you noted that 5 generations in the workplace by 2021. 5 generations in one workplace by 2021, maybe this the end of this. What are these? So people, right? This 1900 to 945, I don't think the silent generation no more working in the bank. So there may be a people, still these baby boomers, Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z are working in the organization. But most of the government organization, they are full of baby boomers and Gen X, baby boomers and Gen X, right? But they are lacking in millennials and Gen Z. But the private banks, you noted that they are having a mixture of these. Now, these are the type of employees who are working in organization, especially for banks, in different characteristics. Now, baby boomers mean people who are working in the bank born between 1946 and 1964. Some people are still working in the bank. I don't think the silent generations are no more there now. But Gen X, also people who born between 1965 and 1976, we call them as Gen X employees, right? And you see that people who born in 1977 and 1997, we call them as millennials, right? After 1988, people who born and joined the bank, we call them as Gen Z. Now, private sector organization, you noted that you may have a lot of mixture of this. Now, why diversify is important? Because these people show different characters, show a different uh, characters. Some are, you see, the Gen Z millennials are more techno savvy than baby boomers and Gen Z. So millennials and Gen Z want to go up the ladder in the hierarchy. When you join the bank, they need quick promotions. They don't want to wait till 5 years, 20 years to get a next promotion. They want quick promotion. They're more on performance based people, right? They want to go up the ladder. So therefore, different type of people in terms of age. Now, diversify, one factor is age, right? And also sex also matters, right? Now, you see ways of working, they are changing, right? Now you look at the baby boomers, Gen Z, Gen Y, and those are more digital natives. And today we have some workforce. We come up with Sophia. What do you mean by a Sophia? Humanoids. So new generations. They are not live people. Who they? Who is Sophia? Sophia is the first mankind sort of a robotics. So they work like you. Now, what is the difference? Now, see, today the workplace consists of, not in Sri Lanka much, but you may have a baby boomers, you may have a Gen X people, millennials, and Gen Z's. Those are digitals, guys. But then you have humanoids. That means Sophia, the name of that robot, AI. Now, she work in the counter. They will work like you. She may not going for a lunch break. She's not going for a 8 hour work, and they're not going to the washroom. So they work. They work because they are machines, but feel like you. So the workplace may be now going to replace by Sophia sometimes. They do everything what you do except for something, right? Now you see how important the diversity in the workplace, right? And look at some of the characteristics of these guys. Gen is, right? This is, so they want to go up quick ladder. So they want to involving in people on Gen X, right? Inclusive, tolerant, So there are some different characteristics shown by different people, right? Now, increasing diversity today is major reason for this diversity. Right? What is the reason? Right? Because of age, demographic reason, right? And the recognitions of diverse for viewpoints, and maybe legislation. sometimes. You see, now you see the parliament also, they brought the legislation, at least there may be a 25% or 5% to be represented by the ladies in the parliament. Like that, organization also represent some ladies. But unfortunately, in today banks, you see a lot of employees are ladies, right? So therefore, high demand for gen, right? And rapidly growing, increasing in international businesses, competitive pressure. So we need diversity in the organization. They need more techno-savvy people to work, right? And some people like, the employees are changing like this, but also remember, uh, customers also change like this, because young customers like to deal with millennials. They will understand. They don't like to deal with baby boomers sometimes, right? The banks counters, most of them are Gen X and millennials. So they are very good in tech, right? But this managing them is a very difficult task. That's also you need to understand. But they bring a lot of new things to the organization, right? And if you really look at it, the today, so they play a more inclusive workplace, values the individual and group differences within the workforce, right? Remember, so that's the important things about the diversity. So therefore, diversity play an important role in the workplace, right? Let's look at it now. What are the dividends of workplace diversity? What are the advantages of workforce diversity within an organization? So, therefore, better use of employee talent. Because remember, as far as the IT, we are going for a digitalization. So, we have a millennials and Gen Z are more talented people. Now, if you really look at it, they may educated. They are not sometimes than baby boomers, right? They may have a banking, may have a SIMA, may have MBAs and all those young guys. So you need people like that. They may be having lack experience, but they they can develop a talent workforce, right? And they increase understanding of the marketplace, because the marketplace also consists of a lot of younger people, right? And increase quality of team problem solution. So they like to work as a team, and also reduce cost associated with high turnover absenteeism. They won't take leave. They used to come, and they may improve morale. So having a diversified, uh, uh, workplace always better for an organization, right? Okay, what are the challenges we face, right? Right. What are the challenges of workforce diversity? What are the challenges of workforce diversity? Right. So, challenges of workforce diversity is like this, right? Now, maybe a conflicts. So, these conflicts between genders, with these baby boomers, baby boomers versus millennial, because they are more techno savvy. එතකොට හැමතිස්සම කචල් අයසන් baby boomers now, because they are very smart. So old employees don't tolerate the young guys, because they absorb everything quickly. And they අපි මෙහෙම නෙමෙයි, අපි මහන්සිලා තමයි මේ තත්ත්වයට ආවේ, මේ බැංකුව ගොඩනගා ගන්න අපි හරියට මහන්සි වුණා. So they talk about their histories. But young guys come up with all sort of new things, because what's the problem? They born late. We born earlier, they born late. That's the difference. So they come up with some benefits. So there is always with the conflicts with the age, and also maybe some conflicts with the ethnicities. Maybe the religion issues, and maybe some gender issues. So workforce harassment for ladies play an important role today, right? There's a new laws are there, right? Okay, so the conflicts are Those are one of the challenge faced by banks under workforce diversity, despite the fact of many benefits. Second, time consuming, right? So there are differences in the way of people carry out instructions, time consumption. So new guys absorb quickly, but all guys are not be absorbed as quickly as possible, right? And then there may be a communication issues, right? There may be a lot of communication issues, and also resistant to change, because young guys are very easy to change, right? But remember, the old guys are little difficult to change, right? All right. Then there may be a discrimination. Why discrimination? When diversity is not accepted in an organization, much of the time this is due to very levels kind of discrimination. Discrimination which exists for gender, religion, disability, economic class, or cultural background. So there may be a lot of discriminations taking place within the organization. They may create informal groups within the organization, people who are in the same old group, same ethnicity groups, maybe due to some, religion. So they get together, some economic classes, cultural backgrounds. So there are some discriminations. Those are the good things are there, but there are also some sort of a some sort of a bad side also. And then harassment, negative attitudes can arise when may lead to harassment of others, right? Harassment issues, if you are not getting to the one group, there may be all versus new, right? High turnover rate, costly, because each time someone leaves the company, because the new generation, if they are not tolerate, if you are not fitting to the culture, they may tend to go out from the organization, right? So therefore, there may be high turnover rate of a diversity works, and also absenteeism uh, and exclusions. So these are some of the drawbacks of diversity management, diversity workforce. But apart from that, you noted that there may be a lot of advantage of this diversity in the organization. People, right? You know what is by diversity mean? So the organization which consists of different set of age people who have in a different age groups, different ethnicity, different educational level, different cultural background, different gender wise, right? Like that. If you have a diversity by workplace, always better, right? But there are some advantages, but also there are some disadvantages of diversity work, right? I think you heard, you learn about what you mean by the diversity workforce, right? Having this one, uh, so we after the break, we have some more times. After the breaks, we may going for discuss about, as I promise you, the ethics, right? That's the final sections of the our series. We are going to discuss about the ethics, right? Ethics, we are going to discuss after the break, what is ethics and things like that. Okay, so we'll have a break now. We will back around 10:50, and we'll go for next half an hours. We can discuss this ethics. What is ethics, and then what are code of conducts of ethics. Then we are going to discuss about some professional bankers must shall comply with certain fundamental principle, employee code of conduct, and then we're going to discuss about the uh, so threats of ethics, and then we're going to discuss some ethical issues in some issues in business ethics, uh, and why people, what are the common causes for unethical behavior of employees, right? So these are the important things, a new area. So we are going to discuss under the after the break, right? I hope you uh, understood this aspect. So we will discuss these things after the breaks. Please be here around 10:50, 10:55. We will discuss the ethics. So we'll have a break and come back with the ethics. And that's the final topic. Okay, we'll start the ethics today. Another new area, but it is we're going to discuss uh, the final sections today and in my lecture series. So, what is ethics? Right now, ethics is give a different meaning to a different people. Now, say for an example, now in Sri Lanka, ethics is referring to a moral principle that governs a person's behavior or the conducting of an activity. What is right and what is wrong. Now, if I put it like this, now say for an example, in Sri Lanka, these prostitute is banned, but some other countries, prostitute is legalized, right? Then what is wrong here? What is correct there, right? And then in Sri Lanka, marriage for a same sex is not legalized. But certain countries like even Indonesia, the latest country joined that is New Zealand. So marrying to a same sex is approved. I mean, allowing. So in Sri Lanka, it is not that. Then what is ethics? So some are okay, but some are not okay. So that's the difference. That's the issue about ethics, right? Mm, okay. So their ethics is referring to the moral principle that governs a person's behavior or the conducting of an activity. Simply, we say how you conduct an activity. Now, the principles of right and wrong that individual used to make choices to guide their behavior. Now, ethics are basically principles and values on individual users to govern his activities and decisions. So there are different definitions, right? Um, Ethics are about what individuals and groups believe is right and what they believe is wrong. Now, that is why I told you some people said right, some people are said wrong, depend on the country. An ethic is a guide as to how to behave. Is an ethic is a guide to how to behave. So that's a very simple definitions of ethics. Now, what is Oxford English Dictionary defines ethics as it's a moral principle that governs a person's behavior on the of the conducting of an activity. That's Oxford definition. Uh, so ethics is thus concerned with how one should act in a certain situation, about doing the right thing, and it is ultimately about morality. So it is the difference between uh, right and wrong. Right now, you see, before we go for uh, ethics, uh, there are a number of factors that affect ethical obligations. So one factor is the law, and the second factor is the government regulation, and the third point is the the ethical codes, right? There are three factors, and sometimes maybe social pressure, corporate culture, personal policies and values, all are affect the ethical obligations, right? Now, there are three types of ethics. There are three types of ethics. One is societal ethics, personal ethics, and a professional ethics. We identify there are three types of ethics. One is societal ethics, and personal ethics, and professional ethics. Now, the ethics that are established by a society are usually written into state or provincial law. So, it's a law will support the ethics. Now, the personal ethics, beside the laws of a society, each person is guided by a set of personal principles that gives them a sense of what is fair and unfair, right and wrong. That is personal ethics. Now, professional ethics mean a code of ethics is usually established by members of a profession to help them define, encourage a conduct specific to their profession. That is professionalism. Say, for an example, if you are a banker, so you need to behave in such a manner as for the banking fraternity or banking community expected you to behave. If you are an accountant, how you behave as an accountant body. So likewise, there may be a societal ethics. So there may be a personal ethics, and there may be a uh, professional ethics. Now, I'll just give a brief earlier. So there are a number of factors that affect the ethical obligation. Again, this depend on the law, because of the common regulation, because of the ethical code, maybe due to social pressure, corporate culture, and personal policies and values. Right. Now, let me explain what is code of ethics. Let me explain what is code of ethics. Now, it's deciding what is right or wrong is not always easy or clear cut. What is right or what is wrong, it is not always easily clear cut, which is the example I'll give you. Now, for this reason, so many organizations, many companies and professional organizations develop their own code of conducts of ethics. So therefore, what do you mean by a code of ethics? It is a collection of principles that intended to guide decision making by members of the organization. Right? So what is code of ethics? Basically, is a principles, is a collection of principles that is intended to guide decision making by members of the organization. Now, principal objective of code of ethics, code of conduct basically, is to provide general outline of the standards of professional and ethical conduct that all employees are expected to conform to, and to ensure that they are aware of the standards of personal integrity that are required when conducting both business and thereon. So that is we call code of conduct. Now, bankers, when you join for bank, so every bank may have a COC. Principal objective of COD is to provide a general outline of the standards of professionals and ethical conduct all employees has to be expected to be performed. Right? So now, because of this downward spiral of ethics in business today, it is no longer simply a matter of products being trustworthy. You must convince your clients that you are trustworthy. Right? You have to show them. Your organization is trustworthy organization. So you know the banking is a business based on integrity and mutual trust. So that's people are purchasing or people are doing business with the bank based under fiduciary capacity. So the banking is a business specifically not compared with other businesses like banks. Businesses are more based on integrity and mutual trust. That is public trust and confidence. So bankers deal with other people's money, right? Not like any other organization. Why banks are specific? Because banks deal with other people's money. That is why we usually call the in a company we call them as investors, or mean the shareholders are the is a primary. But as far as the banks are concerned, the depositors are considered to be the primary, and in the shareholders may be secondary. But other organizations, shareholder is number one, customers are number two. But as far as the banks are concerned, banks primary concern about the customers or depositors. Why bankers deal with other people's money? But you noted that in bankers usually have a quite a bad reputation these days. In fact, statistics show that financial services are the least trusted industry. So people have lost trust about the banking industry and in financial industry. Now, example, some of the organizations, some of the finance companies taken the money from the customers and they are not fulfill the obligation when the customer goes to the bank. So those are the reason why financial services are today our least trusted industry. But banks need to run. We need to have a public confidence, right? That's also an important. Now, that financial world, has in recent times succumb to greed, temptation, short-term bonuses, hard sell. So financial world today are not going for soft sell. They may going for hard sell, maybe due to expecting some short-term benefits because of the competition, right? So there, as a result, there's a many reasons. There may be a lot of financial mis-selling taking place. So as a result, many people think that the financial world does not care about ethical banking because at the end of the day, all that matters is profit, especially the private sector organization. I mean, even for government sector organization, the bottom line is profit. In order to earn profits, they do whatever they want to do. So in that respect, so they are not bothered about ethical issues, right? So therefore, remember, the banking requires highest ethical standards. In banking, these are non-negotiable and define our professions. So you cannot pass it to another body. So therefore, banking requires today highest ethical standards. That you need to understand. But it is not about profit at any cost, but about the right profit. Now, so not about the profits, what bankers expected to earn the right profit. That is about building trust. It is not about targets or hard selling at any cost, but about right selling. As explained to you now, what do you mean by a mis-selling? Mis-selling is referring to without disclosing all the material facts. The bank employees try to sell their products to customers without disclosing negative sides and the bad sides. We call mis-selling, right? So therefore, remember the banks need to do a right selling, and that is ethical banking. And remember, if customers get to know your bank is an ethical bank, and the bank will survive the longest and make the most profit. And ethics, therefore, the difference between what you could do and what is right to do. Right? So the banks believes in total compliance with the letter and the spirit of all applicable laws, rules, and regulations. Right? So, and also it is a duty of banks to um, adhere to the compliance. What is compliance mean? Uh, Otherwise, is face the compliance risk. Sub compliance mean your bank is adhere to or follow the applicable rules, procedures, regulations prevailing in the country, as well as imposed by the regulators. Now, good ethics, remember, can reduce risk, and ethics can give cost savings for an organization. Good ethics also can attract customers, and good ethics can result more effective workforce. So there are a lot of programs or benefits we can enjoy of ethical business rather than unethical practices, right? So first we try to learn about the employee code of conduct. Now, as everybody is aware about the directions 8 of 2011 customer charter, now which categorically spells out what required banks to design a code of conduct to achieve the objectives. One, the banking products are very much complicated and always have a one-sided favor, difficult to understand. So therefore, code of conduct banks need to develop to achieve certain objectives. One, safeguarding the interest of the customer, building up a healthy relationship between customers and banks, improving the customer confidence in the banking sector, and promote ensuring the stability of the banking sector. Those are very much important because the banking sector is the backbone of any country's economy. So therefore, employee code of conduct by help of customer charter under the directions of our regulator, what they're expecting to safeguard the interest of the customers, building up healthy relationship between customers and banks, improving the customer confidence in the banking sector, and promote ensuring the stability in the banking sector. Right. Now, I think some of you must be aware about what is customer charter. What are the key areas covered under this customer charter? Right. We have a citizen charter and we have a customer charter. So that was introduced by our regulator, Central Bank of Sri Lanka. All the banks need to carry out this code of conduct. What are the key areas covered under entire customer charter? Okay, first, the customer informations and understanding of products. Now, right, so customer information, we must provide all the information requested by the customer, and also must explain all the salient features, product benefits, and terms and conditions of the products all to the customers. That's two areas covered under customer charter. Provide customers all the information and talk about all the special features, those good things and the bad things about the products. Second area covered under customer charter is the awareness and understanding of terms and conditions on products. Right now, you noted that when you put an advertisement, they say terms apply terms and conditions. Now, according to the customer charter, it is a duty of bank to create awareness and give adequate knowledge or understanding of the terms and conditions about the products as well as any agreements, right? So it is very important. But today, the customers are not worried about much about the terms and condition, but they want to get the loan or product. But it is a duty of a bank to provide and create awareness about the terms and conditions. Third area covered under the customer charter about the compensation. Now, compensation means suppose you open an account, you conduct um, you maintain a certain account, so you want to close the account, or maybe due to some error in the bank, so customer get penalized. So customer charter talk about the compensation. You need to compensate the employee, compensate the customers, right? And it covered about the compensation. And also, there's another area, today, the banks are appoint bank agents to do some limited business transaction, banking transaction, right? Now, so behalf of the banks, represent the bank. So, bank agent also must fulfill certain requirements because appointment of agent, maintaining of agents, and the relationship with the agent is a duty of bank. Is bank take the responsibility if the agents misbehave, using some harassing customers, debt collection, disclose certain information about the customers, right? Mis-selling. So bank agents cannot supposed to do. It is a responsibility of the bank when they appoint agents to not to do any bad things. That is why central bank has given certain instructions to the bank when you appoint agents. So these are the areas they need to look at, right? And also complaint measure and relief. Now, according to the central bank, again, you must establish in your organization if a customers want to complain, what is the procedure they need to follow? What is the relief mechanism if it is so? So it is well known, will be aware by the customer. There is a complaint procedure or complaint handling procedure. As well as the number six is there will be a special attention and care for needy customers, like disabled customers, differently able customers, we call them as today, and senior citizens. According to the customer charter, they must have a separate counter as well as develop new products to catering to them. That is why we have a ramping facilities today also in all branches. If the wheelchair person customer comes to the bank, he in a position to just to come with the wheelchair, right? It's a special attention for care needy customers. And customer charter up to first 6 point, they disclose what is an obligation by the bank towards the customers. But there are another set of guideline given by bank for customers. What are their customer obligation towards the bank? Right? Now also remember, Customer also have to oblige certain things when you deal with the bank. There's some obligation from the banks as well as the obligation from the customers, right? And pay their dues, pay their any commissions you are supposed to pay your loan installment, don't take loan beyond your repayment capacity, any forge to be informed to the bank, like that. There are a lot of customer obligation. So this customer charter is covers these main key areas, 7 main key areas, right? Why all these things? Because that facilitate to bank to carry out business in ethical manner, right? That is why this code of conduct as well as the charter is enforced by the Central Bank of Sri Lanka as customer charter. So what banks need to do, right? These are 7 key areas. Right. Now we look at it. Some of the points, some of the professional bankers shall comply with certain fundamental principles, right? Some professional bankers must comply or shall comply with some fundamental principles. You as employee of the bank, you must follow certain fundamental principles. Right, now let's look at it. Some of these fundamental principles, right? Okay, such one is called integrity. Now, what do you mean by an integrity? Integrity implies basically fair dealing and truthfulness. Fair dealing and truthfulness. So, the members are also required not to be associated with any form of communications or reports where the informations considers to be materially false, or containing certain misleading statements. So the provided recklessly, things like that. So all professional and business relationship with customers to be straightforward and honest. And that is basically we talk about integrity, right? So one of the main principal bankers need to follow is an integrity. The second principle is what you call the objectivity. Now, objectivity, so you bankers, remember the bankers need to ensure that so their business or professional judgment is not compromised because of the bias or conflict of interest. So there's no bias creeping to the decision making by a banker. There may be a avoid conflict of interest. Now, say for what do you mean by a conflict of interest mean? Uh, Conflict of interest mean now uh, say you're a bank employee or you are a bank director, for example. Now you have the AC company, or you are also a owner or the director or the partner of a shareholder of one particular leasing company. Now, so your bank want to go for tender procedure to buy some buy some ACs for your branch network. Now you also call tenders. Your bank also call tenders as you company also tendered that tender. So now what is as a bank director, what is your objective? To get the services from AC company where you give a better service as well as lower cost. Now that should be your director as a bank director. You have then, but now you have a secondary things in your mind. Why? You try to give for your own company, which is little more than the lowest bidder, because of it is your own company or you are a shareholder. So then what happened? So that's the conflict of interest comes. Your first interest to be safeguarded and get benefited to your bank, but because of your director, you're trying to give the tender to your own company. And that is a conflict of interest. So the bank definitely not have any conflict of interest. Your primary thing is more important than secondary thing, or secondary thing cannot supersede the first one, the primary interest. So that is why we call objectivity. It's a principle banker needs to be followed. And also remember the third point is you cannot undo influence of others to override professional or business judgment. Right now, you cannot influence the credit DGM or credit people, his professional and business judgment. So you cannot impose, or you cannot request or influence your credit DGM to give loan to X because which was rejected by the DGM. So you cannot undue influence of others to override professional or business judgment. So that is what you call the objectivity principles of good professional bank. Now we learn integrity and we learn objectivity. Right? The next one. Third factor is the professional competence and due care. Now there are two main considerations under this heading. So the bankers are required to have a necessary professional knowledge and skills to carry out work of clients. So that is why we may do exams like this. That is why you follow courses like this. You are required to have a necessary professional knowledge in the banking industry and also required skills to carry out. And also remember, you as bankers must follow applicable technical and professional standards when providing a professional services. Now, appropriate levels of professionals' competence must first be attained and then maintained. So you have to attain first as well as then you need to maintain. Now, maintains implies keeping up to date with business and professional development. And in many institutes, completions of an annual return confirming that continued professional development requirement must be made. Right? So once you develop, once you obtain, you don't think you are have a professional competence. No. That is why a lot of organization provide professional services. So they requesting their members to continue with the professional development. That is what you call CPD. Even for now the IBSL also. Now they are going also to be introduced a CPD system. A certain points you need to earn. Otherwise, you just completed your banking exam, then you are not professional competence. Why? You may got your banking qualification 20 years ago. It may be not applied now, but you learned during that time. So the entire banking must change. So you need to be updated. So that is what you call professional competence, right? That is what CBD requirements need to be developed. You need to be continuously develop your professional career, right? So that's the most important thing. And also you need to develop your technical and professional standard by providing services to customers, right? That's the third point. And the next point, as everybody is well aware, about the confidentiality. Now this is of course is make it compulsory by our Banking Act also under Section 77 of 1988 Banking 30 of 1988 Banking Act. So information acquired as a result of a professional and business relationship not disclose any such information to third parties. There are some exceptions to this law, this ethics. By suppose if the concern of the customer, you can divert this information, or maybe due to court order, or maybe due to certain institutions like CRIP, like Inland Revenue Department, you are supposed to disclose certain customer information. Otherwise, usually you need to maintain this confidentiality. And also remember, another important thing is confidential information acquired during your provisions of professional services is not used for personal advantages. So that's this also you need to remember. The need to maintain confidentiality is normally extended to cover the bankers' social environment, as well. And confidentiality, even though it is there in the law in section 77, but if you break the confidentiality, you are section 79, 1 million or maximum of 1 year jail. That is very negligible in today's context. So therefore, the Banking Act, which the central bank is going to implement maybe next year, early next year, they may address the penalty about this disclosing about customers' information. But as a bank, it is a duty, a professional duty, is of maintain the fundamental principle that confidentiality need to be maintained. Right? Okay. Then the next one is the professional behavior. Now, bankers must comply with all relevant laws and regulations. Now, a bank is required to treat all people contacted in a professional capacity with the courtesy and consideration. Right? So that's your professional behavior. So bankers must comply with all relevant laws and regulation, and otherwise you are supposed to expose to compliance risk. So you need to understand. So these are what you call uh, the principles of principles of professional banker shall comply. These are fundamental principles. What are the five? Integrity, objectivity, professional competence and due care, confidentiality, and a professional behavior. These are five principles every professional banker must need to be followed or adhere to. Right? Now let's try to discuss with some of the threats and safeguards. Now, the circumstances in which management or we, the bankers, operate give rise to a specific threats to compliance with the fundamental principle. It is impossible to define every situation that creates such, specify the appropriate mitigation action. So apply the fundamental principles. We first need to be able to identify and evaluate the existing or potential threats to them. Now, what we are going to discuss now, the circumstances that you cannot behave in a professional bank. What are the threats you are facing not to apply or not to behave or not to carry out your principle standards, right? So let me explain now what are the bankers facing threats. There are five types of threats bankers usually face when they carried out their professional business. First one, self-interest threats, self-review threats, advocacy threats, familiarity threats, and intimidation threats. Right? Now let me explain one by one what are the threats faced by the banker when you are going to adhere or follow certain professional act as a professional bank, right? Okay, so first we look at it. What do you mean by self-interest threat? Now say these threats often result in what is commonly called as a conflict of interest situation. Right? Now, the self-interest can occur as a result of your own, your own or your close family interest. Maybe it's financial or maybe otherwise. So these threats usually, as we call them as, commonly call them as conflict of interest situations. Now, results from concern over, I mean, the working in a business of self-interest threat could result from concern over job security or from incentive remunerations arrangements, possibly losing self-interest of the customer. So therefore, you may not in a position to carry out your thing because of these issues, right? Self-interest things. Right. Now let's look at the next one. Self-review threat. Now the self-review threats mean occur when you are required to reevaluate your own previous judgment. So now say for an example, you have been asked to review and justify your business decision you made. So that's some sort of a professionalism will have a threat. Now, for an example, you, based on certain assumptions, based on decision, you're rejecting granting a loan to ex-customer. But your general manager or your CEO requests you to review your or maybe justify the business decision you made. So you as a professional banker, you took some decision. You was asked to relook at it, your decision. So there are a lot of occasions which will happen. Now say for an example, another example. You evaluate one of your subordinates. And this particular subordinate maybe have a link with the CEO, and they communicated to CEO saying that, so I have not properly evaluate mistakes. Then CEO calls you and asks you to relook at it, your evaluation process. So that's you not in a position to carry out your professional way of behaving or principles because of you may expose to self-review threat. You yourself try to change your decision. So that is what you call self-review threat, right? Self-review threats. I hope you understood that concept, right? The next threat is what you call advocacy threat. So, in general, promoting the legitimate goals of your employer that can be a problem. I mean, this advocacy threat is can be a problem when you are promoting a position so opinion to the point that your subsequent objective is compromise. So it could include acting as an advocate on behalf of an assurance client in litigations or dispute with third parties. So that is what you call the advocacy threat. In general, promoting the legitimate goals of your employer does not create an advocacy threat, provided that any statement you make are not misleading. Right? So that's another issue. It's called advocacy threats. Then we call the familiarity threats, another issue. Now, this can result from a long association with the business contacts who influence the business decisions, long association with colleagues, or from accepting gift or preferential treatment from a client. So you cannot carry out your business in a professional standard due to this threat. Just because you have a long association with your client, or maybe your colleagues is telling, and can you look into this matter, Magi always try to help him. Or some customer will give you some preferential treatment. So that is a threat you are going to face. Thereby you cannot apply your professional principles. That basically for familiarity threats. Next one we call intermediation threats. What do you mean by intermediation threats? It could be the threats of dismissal over a disagreement about applying and banking principle. Now, say for an example, you was requested by your boss to change the accounting standards or improve the profits. So that threats you are facing is called intermediation threats. Because you prepared you all these final accounts, say for your accountant, through figures, through profit figures, but your boss is influenced to change the profit to show little higher value. Otherwise, not good for your CEO. So that is what you call the dominant personality attempting to influence the decision-making process. So that threat you are facing is called intimidation threats, right? Okay, right. So just briefly explain you what we have learned. So how you as a banker in behave in a professionally and ethical manner. Say you as a banker, how you behave as a banker in a professional and ethical manner. For that, we discuss professional bankers. As a professional banker, you need to comply with certain fundamental principles. So I'll explain to you five fundamental principles you as a professional banker need to comply. What are those fundamental principles? Integrity, objectivity, professional competence and due care, confidentiality, and professional behavior. Those are, we call them as a professional banker need to comply with some fundamental principle if you want to behave like a ethical manner. Right? The next issue comes when you are trying to comply with those professional standards or professional adhering to the professional principles. We are supposed to be good things as an ethical banker need to follow. So you may come across sometimes you may not in a position to practice these fundamental principles due to some threats, due to some different type of threats. That means your decisions may be influenced. Now we have identified there are five type of threats you face as a professional banker when you carried out your day-to-day business. These five threats we can identify as self-interest test, right? Self-review threat, advocacy threat, familiarity threats, and intimidation threats. Now, what do you mean by a self-interest threat? Me, especially in the conflict of interest situation. So the self-interest threats come into the scene. So then during that time, you're not in a position to behave as a professional banker. Second threat, self-review threat. So when you are required to reevaluate your own previous judgment you have given, so how can you become a professional banker? So you are facing a threat from maybe some top people or maybe some people to change or relook at it your decisions. That is self-review threat. The next threat we call is an advocacy threat. So in general, promoting the legitimate goals of your employer does not create an advocacy threat, provided that besides but you may are not misleading. So you asked to write some misleading information. Right? Next one is called the familiarity threats. This can result from a long association with business contact with your colleagues, maybe your customers, maybe your clients. You may have some preferential treatment from a client which are very much known to you or be very good rapport with you, have a long-term relationship, maybe have some relatives. So you cannot carry out your professionalism. That threats familiarity threats, right? And the last threat as a professional banker face is some of your dominant personality attempt to influence the decision making process, right? So these are the threat faced by a professional banker when he's going to carry out his professional job, right? I think now you understood what are the principles of professional banker need to follow, and how why they are not in a position to sometimes carry because of these threats. Now the good anyhow professional banker might not much not much not face these threats. I mean, he has to face these threats, and they are not change their decision. They are not change their professionalism because of these threats. But it's very sensitive threats, right? Okay, right. Now let's look at it. Some of the typical issues in business ethics today, right? What are the typical issues in business ethics? So, the first one is creative accounting. I think you know what you mean by a creative accounting. Actually, it is a financial fraud. Remember, right? Mulya vanchava, creative accounting. Now, what do you mean by a financial fraud? Mean if you illegally or unauthorized way of getting the money from the bank or is called the financial fraud. But creative accounting also a financial fraud. What do you mean by a creative accounting? So you are trying to manipulate your profits, maybe to reduce the profits or maybe to increase the profits for various reasons. When you're disclosing your financial statement, P&L account, are trying to show highest profit in order to attract more investors or to improve your earning per share or maybe improve your stock market price or maybe reduce purposely your profit in a way to prevent any taxes. Both occasions we call them as a is a financial fraud. That is called creative accounting. Right? So creating accounting as a result of that, you see a lot of uh, big institutions collapse. Right? So that is the one of the main ethics, business ethics we are facing. Creative accounting. Then misleading advertising. Right now, a lot of bankers advertise giving showing high benefits, high interest rates, misleading advertising. Some people say advertising of disclosing floating rate and a fixed rate. So we are giving a housing loan 4% today. Say for an example, there's an advertisement. 4% in floating rate. So people thinking that 4% floating mean is a fixed rate for your tenant. But it is not the case. The floating rate mean is depend on the market rates. If the market rate is high, it's going up. So you have to disclose all the information to customers. What is floating rate? And that is why central bank also put some annual effective rate for when you're advertising interest rates advertisements. So misleading advertising. Now you like this, some say if you applied, Now, there are a lot of advertisements taking place in, especially telecine advertisement, right? All people, when you use this cream or if you do some exercise buying this machine, earlier you like this and now you like this. So those are misleading advertising. And the next one is the mis-selling. I'll explain to you what you misspelling me without telling the all the attributes of a product. You are only talk about the key selling points. You try to sell the product or misleading you. It's called mis-selling, right? So those are ethics, business ethics. Then data protections and privacy. Now some of the information is passed to the third party, right? So then the political contribution to gain influence, right? And this is in fact, we today some people are talk about this political contribution to gain some influence. So some people improve their businesses because of some political connections. Maybe they support at the elections or something like that. Those are the issues in business ethics. I don't want to explain all these things in details. Then using legal loopholes to avoid paying tax. Now, especially when you import items, you know, earlier we call them as a PIN number. Now it's called HP code. Based on that HP code, so the tax was marked. You can import certain items under separate HS number where you get higher a lower tax regime. Now, how imports, there is a customs, you have a HS code. That particular HS code, say for example, potatoes, there is a HS code, right? And it's front of that, it's giving you the tax rate. So potato tax, say HS code is, say for example, 1,000. First, under the front of that, we said 50% tax. But you can get the potato, instead of 1,000, we put 2,000 HS code where you tax rate is 10%. So there you are try to manipulate your HS code in a different way. Potato, we change it little bit. They will bring the lowest HS code tax rate. So that's also cheating. It's a business ethics. So you identify certain legal loopholes to avoid paying tax. And you see today you have a lot of marketing, sales, and negotiation techniques, right? Without disclosing the negative sides of that, right? Provided with lot of incentives. That is why central bank was earlier was cancel these except for foreign remittances. There will be a lot of marketing, promotional campaign carried out by the banks. Jaya Sri, Jaya Sikuru, can remember. So if you maintain 10,000 rupees in the current account or savings account, you were eligible to have a draw. So the central banks cancel all the draws for their deposits except for foreign remittances. Right? So those are issues faced by business ethics. And also some of the environmental issues and related social concern. So packing materials, look at it. This is not biodegradable, right? So which damage the environment. So that particular product. So those are again the ethical issues. Next one is the product issues like patents and copyright infringements. Now, I'll tell you a classic example on this also. Earlier in Sri Lanka, we had Mahajana Papada, a very famous one. This is a true case study, right? We call Mahajana Papada. You know the Papadang, right? Mahajana Papadang. It's a very famous Papadang in Sri Lanka. Right? They have the patent right or the copyrights to use that brand name. Now, one company manufacture same Papadang. Now, they say Mahajana Govi Papada. That Govi, let us put it in a very light lettering. But for the face value, you see, it's also look like Mahajana Papada. But if you really look at close to the the outer cover of the Papada, they said Mahajana Govi Papada. That Govi word is very pale in color, maybe light yellow. So you can't see the difference between Mahajana Papadang and Mahajana Govi Papadang. But you cannot take any legal action because there is a word called Govi. Is another type of Papadang. Right? So that is infringement. Selling the products without misusing the customers of their copyrights. Right? So those are infringements. And also today the bankers are talking about insider dealings. What do you mean by insider dealing? Now, especially this is good in the share markets and things like that. Some of the customers are benefited because of information passed by inside a guy. So they may take in an advantage. Now say example for insider dealing. Now say Unilever. Now say for okay, we take John Keels for an example. Now John Keels going to issue a right issue, say bonus issue or right issue, say bonus issue, another 2 weeks times. You know what do you mean by a bonus issue, right? The people who have the shares say 1 to 3. If you have one share, there may be 3 bonus free of charge going to issue. So the John Keys took a decision inside. We are going to disclose these their decision maybe another 2 weeks time or maybe 1 week time. So somebody in that decision making in the John Keels may communicated one of his customers, one of his friend, telling that, if you are involving in share market, buy some John Keels shares, they are going to issue a bonus share. Now, based on this information, that particular person through the stock market purchase, say he had around 1 lakh shares. He purchased 300,000 shares, say for an example. Now, after 2 weeks time, and they introduce 1 to 3. So how much he is getting now? Additional shares? Everyone 3 shares. So 3,000 shares, he get 9,000 shares. 90,000, 9 lakh shares. So how he get this information? Through some person inside in this John Keels. So that is what you call insider dealing. Why it's become insider dealing is a bad ethics? Because if everybody knows, that's no problem. But only few people are knows. John is going to issue a share, bonus share. So that is a, we call them as insider dealing. So those are unethical things. But remember, it is also funny. We have a one guy called Rajaratnam in Sri Lankan who involving in stock market in USA. They disclose all this some of the information. He is in the jail now in USA. Famous stock guy, Mr. Rajaratnam. And also, I know some of the ethical is employee issues such as discrimination because of the sex issues or unfair dismissal also can be considered as unethical, not giving the promotion as well as the bribery. So those are, we call them as unethical issues. Unethical issues, right? And let's now look at it. Why people behave in unethical manner? Why we do a lot of practices mentioned above? Why a lot of professionals and employees or maybe other people behave in unethical way? There may be a various reasons. One reason is pressure to objectives and deadline. If they are pressurized for achievement of objectives or meeting their deadlines, so you may go for unethical practice. As well as increase in acute competition. Increase in acute competition. Increasing acute competition. Right? Because of, in order to beat the competition, so you may use unethical practice. Due to economic greed, profits oriented things. So some of the information to sell by the media for improve their businesses, pressure to earn profits, lack of management, support and poor leadership, selecting the wrong people to the jobs without proper analyzing, or maybe due to other factors. So these are the run of the causes we noted for unethical behavior, right? So that's, there are so many things, but I just briefly touch about the ethics. So what we learn what is ethics, what do you mean by an ethics, then we discuss about what is code of ethics or code of conduct. To support that, what central bank issue is called customer charter, is a code of conduct banks need to follow. What are the key areas covered under customer charter? And we discuss, as a professional banker, what are the things, what are the fundamental principles you need to comply? What threats you face as a professional banker when you're trying to comply with these fundamental principles? And then we discuss some of the typical issues in business ethics. And finally, and we discuss the common causes of unethical behavior. Why people behave unethically? What are the reasons for that? Right? So I think you learn a little bit of ethics and business ethics. right? So from that point, we are come to a end of uh, my series, right? Okay. So therefore, maybe next Sunday, somebody is going to come up. So there may be, you as you are aware, there is a separate test paper to test your managing people in organization. It usually consists of 7 questions, and so I may set the paper benefited to here. So there are so many students. I don't know today. Usually, it's around 10 people are actively or live. I mean, join every day. But there are so many people. Maybe look at it later part. And I noted that there are some people like Gayan. Then they regularly participated this course. Gayan, then Isivara, Tayaparan, right? So you have to be benefited, but there may be other people who may watch the recorded versions. But the questions I will set it cover the entire area. The 7 questions maybe cover the entire area, right? So I am not much sure when you are going to have the exam, but don't worry. So people who are with participated can answer definitely. So if you have any issues pertaining to the exam, and please call me if you want to clarify certain things. My number is very easy for you to remember. Start with not 777 8 6 4 2 0 2. Right, very easy. Let us start with 8, then -2, 8 6 4 2 0 2. Right, if you have any problem, just communicate it to me. Hopefully, and thank you very much for most of you, especially I can remember Isivara and Tayaparan and Gayan even. So you are continuously attended to my lectures, and thank you very much. And so from this, we will concluded the our 10-week lecture series where I try to give something for you about management and people and some ethics. Okay, so we will see you another course maybe, and thank you very much. Finally, if you want to ask any question before I wind it up my session, any questions you need to ask from me, try to take the advantage of this, right? Okay, Gaya, Sivara, Tayapara, right? Okay, so then thank you very much. Patiently waited for my lectures for the last 10 weeks. So I hope you have learned something out of my lecture series, and try to answer the questions well. And if you have any problems or any clarification, please try to communicate with me. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.